All right. Apologies, everyone. I finished chapter 4, or I thought I did. And at the end of chapter four's discussion, we got to this chart that was called Financing the Revolution, or Financing the Bolshevik Revolution. It's just a chart. And I read it as chapter 5, and I read that as like a chapter end because in my Kindle version, it goes to a new page, and for some reason, I just wasn't paying attention. So we have a few more things to get into because, the Bolshevik Revolution within this chapter had just begun and then it kind of just ended. There's some interesting stuff still to go. Remember, we ended up with Jacob Schiff, who was kind of related to the Warburgs and all this. And he has participation in the revolution. There's talk about that sometimes comes up of the Bolshevism, the Bolshevik Revolution being a Jewish plot, and some anti-Semitism has certainly come out of that from people who can't separate the two. There were other popular financiers. One was named Lord Albert Milner, who organized a secret organization called the Round Table, which we will talk about. Remember, I was quoting Degulevich. He speaks about Lord Alfred Milner. He speaks about how during this revolution in Petrograd, it was just teeming with English, and he could even name the streets and the number of houses in which the British agents were quartered, and distributing money to the soldiers and inciting them to mutiny. And the same old faces that were there at the Bolshevik Revolution were the ones that created the Federal Reserve System, initiated the gradual income tax, set up tax-free foundations, and pushed America into World War I. So, what did these people have to gain by financing the Russian Revolution? We should be able to make some guesses, but if they were working behind the scenes, financing both sides of conflicts, they would have seen a lot of opportunity. It may not have been coincidental, but Russia was the one major European country without a central bank. So in Russia, for the first time, the communist conspiracy gained a geographical homeland. The West now had an enemy. So in the Bolshevik Revolution, we have some of the world's most rich and powerful men financing a movement which claims its very existence is based on the concept of stripping the wealth from people, like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, Schiffs, Warburgs, Morgans, Harrimans, Milners. But obviously, these men have no fear of international communism, for they financed it. They don't fear it. It must mean that they have loopholes to get away from it, or that they can control it, according to the author. Standard operating procedure of the Rothschilds and their allies to control both sides of every conflict means that they must create an enemy for both sides if they're going to collect from the king. The East-West power, balance of power politics is used as one of the main excuses for socializing America, according to this author again. And I shouldn't have to keep saying that, but you know that. Although it was not their main purpose, by nationalization of Russia, the insiders bought themselves an enormous piece of real estate, complete with mineral rights, for somewhere between $30 and $40 million. Lord Alfred Milner, wealthy Englishman and frontman to the Rothschilds, served as paymaster for the international bankers in Petrograd during the Bolshevik Revolution. Milner later headed secret society known as the Round Table, which was dedicated to establishing a world government whereby a clique of super-rich financiers would control the world under the guise of socialism. And I was looking through some of these warnings we've had some from LDS presidents and whatnot mostly Ezra Taft Benson, warning against communism. There was one that is found in the August edition of the Improvement Era from, which year was this? 1936, I believe. Let me see. Yeah, 1936 of the Improvement Era. There are some warnings that the presidency brought out. Let me see if I can just bring that up here. Let me scroll down. Warning to church members. With great regret, we learn from credible sources, government and others, that a few church members are joining directly or indirectly with the communists and are taking part in their activities. The church doesn't interfere, with other affiliations and that people want to be with. But communism is not a political party nor a political plan under the Constitution. It is a system of government that is the opposite of our constitutional government, and it would be necessary to destroy our government before communism could be set up in the United States. So they recognized this, what was going on. Since communism established would destroy our American constitutional government, to support communism is treasonable to our free institutions, and no patriotic American citizen may become either a communist or supporter of communism. This is interesting here. This is why I wanted to bring this up. And I want to go to some of these other addresses and things that we can talk about. And I was going to go and maybe go through the Gulag Archipelago a little bit. But it kind of freaked me out the first time I read through it. But I think maybe looking at some of the early chapters that talk about kind of what it felt like in a communistic society and some of those early arrests and things, it's chilling but worth listening to. But here's from this warning from the first presidency. To our church members, we say communism is not the united order and bears only the most superficial resemblance thereto. Communism is based upon intolerance and force, the united order upon love and freedom of conscience and action. And I think people see when they see communism, they're kind of seeing the potential of something like a united order or consecration where we freely give. But when it's forceful, it just doesn't work the same way, and it all kind of flows towards a central point where we have people who pick from the pockets of what is being forcefully confiscated, or it like takes from the heap. Here we go. I lost my spot. Communists cannot establish the united order, nor will communism bring it about. The united order will be established by the Lord in his own due time and in accordance to the regular prescribed order of the church. Furthermore, it is charged by universal report, which is not successfully contradicted or disproved, that communism undertakes to control, if not indeed to prescribe, the religious life of the people living within its jurisdiction, and it even reaches its hand into the sanctity of the family circle itself, disrupting the normal relationship of parent and child, all in a matter unknown and unsanctioned under the constitutional guarantees under which we in America live. Such interference would be contrary to the fundamental precepts of the gospel and to the teaching and order of the church. Communism thus being thus hostile to loyal American citizenship and incompatible with true church membership, of necessity no loyal American citizen and no faithful church member can be a communist. We call upon all church members completely to eschew communism and the safety of our divinely inspired constitutional government and the welfare of our church imperatively demand that communism shall have no place in America. That's signed by Heber J. Grant, J. Reuben Clark Jr., and David O. McKay. And I suppose that I have been naive as well because I thought, okay, well, I know that we shouldn't have communism. So when I get older, I won't vote for that. And now that I'm older, I certainly try not to vote for things that would be that way. But more and more, it seems like rather than it necessarily always being about social issues and this and that, we can see how things can creep into it. Kind of some of the central tenets of control can creep into government without maybe people being as aware that it is happening, and it's almost like it can be changed. Things can be changed later to further push things to the left. Like even if you are not voting for something that is socialistic and whatnot, if you are ceding control, you have to kind of question where that control is going. And so, anyway, people like Ezra Taft Benson, people like the author here, believe that this secret society known as the Round Table was dedicated to establishing government everywhere. That would be kind of beholden to them. And it is interesting that, of all places, Russia did not yet have this central bank. And now that they had established a true communist society or a nation, they had a ground zero for it, and then it kind of gave the rest of the world, the rest of the Western world that was pushing against it, a new enemy to be afraid of, right? Let's go back to reading some of these. We can only theorize on the manner in which Moscow is controlled from New York, London, and Paris. And this is written in 1971. And of course, they still would feel like it was controlled in that manner. Undoubtedly, much of the control is economic, but certainly the international bankers have an enforcer arm within Russia to keep Soviet leaders in line. So we do know this, however. A clique of American financiers not only helped establish communism in Russia, but has striven mightily ever since to keep it alive, which is hard to believe. That's when kind of tinfoil hat sort of stuff starts to come out, but like it's hard to believe that that sort of thing would happen. But again, when you see President Benson, who has been in the know and he's seen this sort of stuff happening himself, it seems like. And I mean, a lot of people within the church called him a tinfoil hat guy too, but maybe he was right. So there was the transfer of money, transfer of technical information, all this to the Soviet Union. It is not an exaggeration to say that the USSR was made in the USA. So we're almost done here. I want to read this part in full. Quote from the author. At Versailles, this same clique carved up Europe and set the stage for World War II. As Lord Curzon commented, it is not a peace treaty, it is simply a break in hostilities. In 1933, the same insiders pushed FDR into recognizing the Soviet Union, thus saving it from financial collapse, while at the same time they were underwriting huge loans on both sides of the Atlantic for the new regime of Adolf Hitler. In so doing, they assisted greatly in setting the stage for World War II and the events that followed. I'm going to skip some of this because they're busy carving up Europe or planning to carve up Europe. Here. Again, at Yalta and Potsdam in 1945, they established the Chinese policy, later summarized by Owen Lattimore. Quote, the problem was how to allow them, China, to fall without making it look as if the United States had pushed them. The facts are inescapable. In one country after another, communism has been imposed on the local population from the top down. The most prominent forces for the imposition of that tyranny came from the United States and Great Britain. Here is a charge that no American enjoys making, but the facts lead to no other possible conclusion. The idea that communism is a movement of the downtrodden masses is a fraud. None of the foregoing makes sense if communism really is what the communists and the establishment tell us it is. But if communism is an arm of a bigger conspiracy to control the world by power-mad billionaires, it all becomes perfectly logical. We cannot stress too greatly the importance of the reader, keeping in mind that this book is discussing only one segment of the conspiracy, certain international bankers. Other equally important segments, which work to foment labor, religious, and racial strife in order to promote socialism, have been described in numerous other books. It would be equally disastrous to lump all businessmen and bankers into the conspiracy. One must draw the distinction between competitive free enterprise, the most moral and productive system ever devised, and cartel capitalism dominated by industrial monopolists and international bankers. These corporate socialists are the deadly enemies of competitive private enterprise. And he ends the chapter with this. Liberals are willing to believe that these robber barons will fix prices, rig markets, establish monopolies, buy politicians, exploit employees, and fire them the day before they are eligible for pensions, but they absolutely will not believe that these same men would want to rule the world or would use communism as the striking edge for their conspiracy. When one discusses the machinations of these men, liberals usually respond by saying, "But don't you think they mean well?" However, if you think with logic, reason, and precision in this field and try to expose these power seekers, the establishment's mass media will accuse you of being a dangerous paranoid who is dividing our people. In every other area, they encourage dissent as being healthy in a democracy. So, next chapter, chapter 5, is not called Financing the Bolsheviks, the Bolshevik Revolution. Chapter 5 is actually called Establishing the Establishment. And I'll see you then.